Thousands of people, packed into an airport, waving flags, chanting her name, some of them in tears. That's not something you see every day. That's not something you see ever, really, unless you're talking about a pop star or a head of state. But this wasn't a concert tour. This wasn't a diplomatic arrival. This was a 20-year-old tennis player walking through the doors of Madrid Barajas Airport, and the people who showed up to greet her had flown in from across Europe, driven through the night, taken days off work, all just to catch a glimpse of her. Her name is Alex. And if you haven't been paying attention to women's tennis over the last year, then what happened in Madrid is going to feel almost impossible to believe. But here's the thing. It happened. All of it. The crowd, the chaos, the flags, the chanting, and then the storm that followed. Because within hours of that video hitting social media, something went very wrong. Not with Alex. Not with the tournament. Not with anything real. What went wrong was the story people decided to tell about it. And that story, built on nothing, verified by nobody, spread to millions of people before anyone had a chance to stop it. This is what happened, how it started, why it mattered, and what it says about the world we're living in right now. But before we get into the fallout, you need to understand who Alex is, because without that context, none of this makes sense. She's 20 years old. She's Filipino. She grew up watching tennis on a small screen in a country where the sport was never really considered something local kids could break into at the highest level. And yet here she is, ranked 44 in the world, competing on the biggest stages in women's tennis, drawing crowds that veteran players with decades of experience have never come close to inspiring. People talk about the Serena effect, the way Serena Williams transformed the sport and brought in audiences that tennis had never reached before. People talk about the Osaka effect, the way Naomi made tennis feel relevant to an entirely new generation. What's happening with Alex right now is being called the Elo effect, and it is something else entirely. Ticket systems crash when her matches go on sale. Stadiums that are half full for other matches are overflowing when she plays. Filipino communities across the globe organize travel, coordinate schedules, show up in numbers that leave tournament organizers scrambling. There's something about her that connects with people on a level that goes beyond tennis. Maybe it's the way she carries herself. Maybe it's the story she represents. Maybe it's the fact that she's still so young and yet so composed, so driven, so completely unbothered by the pressure that would break most people twice her age. Whatever it is, it's real. And the WTA knows it. They've adjusted schedules to accommodate her matches. They've moved her to bigger courts. They've hired additional security. They have essentially restructured parts of their operational planning around one 20-year-old player because the alternative, underestimating the crowd she draws, has proven to be a logistical disaster more than once. So when Alex landed in Madrid ahead of the Mutua Madrid Open, the Filipino community that had gathered to welcome her wasn't a surprise to anyone who had been following her story. It was completely expected. It was, if anything, exactly what people had come to anticipate. The surprise was the scale of it. Because the footage that came out of that airport was something else. You have to actually watch it to understand the energy in that terminal. Thousands of people pressed together, flags from the Philippines rippling in the air, the sound of Laban Alex rising up like a wave and bouncing off the ceiling. Security guards moving quickly, trying to manage a situation that had clearly grown beyond what anyone had planned for. And right in the middle of all of it, Alex, walking through that crowd with this look on her face that somehow manages to be both deeply moved and completely calm at the same time. She was waving. She was smiling. She looked genuinely overwhelmed in the best possible way. It was the kind of moment that reminds you why sports matter. Not the scores, not the rankings, not the prize money. The moments. The human moments. When a young woman from a country that has never had a top 50 women's tennis player walks through an airport and finds thousands of her people there, waiting, chanting, crying, celebrating. That moment deserved to be celebrated. It deserved to be shared.
And it was.
The video got millions of views within hours. It spread across every platform. People who had never watched a single WTA match shared it because the emotion in that footage transcended the sport entirely. You didn't need to know anything about tennis to feel something watching it. You didn't need to know Alex's ranking or her recent results or anything about the Madrid Open. You just needed to be human. And then, almost immediately, something poisonous crept into the conversation. It started small. A post here, a comment there. Someone somewhere decided to look at this video of a player arriving at an airport and describe it as a player leaving. Whether it was deliberate or just careless, whether it was someone with an agenda or someone who genuinely misread the situation, it doesn't really matter at this point because the damage was the same either way. The post said Alex had exited Spain, that she had withdrawn from the Madrid Open, that the tournament was facing a crisis. It got shared. Then it got shared again. And again. Other accounts picked it up, added their own dramatic spin, created their own headlines. Madrid Open in crisis. Star player withdraws. WTA in panic. None of it had a single shred of truth behind it. But it didn't need truth. It had momentum. And on social media, momentum is almost impossible to stop once it gets going. The hashtag started trending. Fans who had been celebrating hours earlier were now panicking, flooding comment sections with questions, demanding answers, tagging the WTA, tagging tournament organizers, tagging anyone who might know what was happening. Sponsors started calling. Broadcasters started asking questions. The WTA's communications team, which had probably been looking at that airport video and feeling genuinely good about the state of the sport, suddenly found itself in the middle of a crisis that had materialized out of thin air. And here's what makes it particularly maddening. The video was right there. The same video that sparked the misinformation also contained the truth. You could watch it and see, clearly, that this was an arrival. She was walking into the terminal. The fans were there to welcome her. The flags, the chants, the emotion, all of it was directed at someone coming in, not someone leaving. But in the attention economy, people don't always watch before they share. They read a headline, they see a caption, they absorb the emotional temperature of a post, and they pass it on. The actual content, the actual footage, the actual facts, those things get lost somewhere in the scroll. Inside WTA headquarters, the reaction was not calm. People who work in professional sports communications are used to managing narratives, used to dealing with rumors and controversies, and the occasional genuine crisis. But this was different, because this wasn't a controversy born from something Alex did. It wasn't a controversy born from anything real at all. It was a controversy born from a lie that spread faster than anyone could chase it down. One official was reportedly furious, and honestly, who could blame them? The WTA had spent years trying to grow the game globally, trying to build the kind of crossover stars who could bring new audiences to the sport. With Alex, they had achieved something that exceeded every expectation. She was the answer to every question they had been asking about the future of women's tennis. Young, compelling, globally connected, with a fan base that was passionate in a way that felt genuinely new. And now that fan base was being fed false information and the tournament was being described as a disaster and crisis, all because someone on the internet got the story completely backwards. The official statement the WTA released was measured, careful, professional. They confirmed that Alex was in Spain. They confirmed she was preparing for the tournament. They encouraged fans to rely on official sources. What the statement didn't capture, and couldn't really capture, was the frustration behind it. The sense that something genuinely beautiful had been turned into something ugly through a combination of carelessness and, in some cases, deliberate deception. A beautiful moment, one spokesperson said. Thousands of fans welcoming a young athlete, twisted into something negative. That's not fair to Alex. It's not fair to her fans. It's not fair to the sport. The corrections started coming, but corrections never travel as fast as the original story. That's one of the most consistent and depressing truths about how information spreads in the modern world. The lie gets a head start, and it never really gives it back. Philippine news outlets moved quickly. Rappler, GMA News, The Philippine Star, all of them published fact checks. All of them confirmed the same thing. Alex was in Spain. The video showed her arrival. The withdrawal rumors were completely false. Journalists who actually knew what they were talking about pushed back hard against the narrative that had taken hold. But for every person who saw the correction, there were probably 10 who had already seen the original post and moved on, their impression of the situation permanently shaped by something that never happened. And somewhere in the middle of all this noise, Alex was on a practice court. That detail matters more than it might seem at first. Because the easiest thing in the world, the thing that would have been completely understandable and entirely human, would have been to get pulled into it. To respond. To defend herself. To go online and say, "I'm here, I didn't leave, stop spreading lies."
She didn't do any of that.
Her team issued a brief statement, but Alex herself chose a different kind of response. She went to work. At the Caja Magica, the famous complex where the Madrid Open is held, she was on court doing what she does. Ground strokes, movement drills, serve practice. The focus